Welcome back to the Foundation in C# course. We're currently in Module 2. In this lesson, we're going to have yet another mini project. We've covered a lot of ground so far, and we want to make sure we can put all this together. Now, really this is an easier one just because you have been putting a lot of these pieces together over time as you've done your homework. And you've been doing your homework, right? So let's start off with our pro tip, and that is remember to plan your project before you start coding. Seems a lot like the last mini project, right? Where we said plan your project before starting your code. Well, that's because it's that important. So, Mr. Romani, you yet again, plan your project first. So the homework is to build a console guest book. Ask the user for their name and how many are in their party. Keep track of how many people are at the party. And at the end, print out the guest list and the total number of guests. So there's a couple different moving pieces here. So when a guest comes to the party, you say, what's your name? Tim. And how many people are in your party? So I've got a family of 4. So I'd sign in as Tim, and I'd say I've got 4 people. That includes me. So that's what I'd give you. And you would capture both my name and also the number of people that are in my party. And then the next person comes, and that's Sue, and she has 3 in her party. So now there's 7 total guests, and you're remembering both Tim and Sue. Now, probably for a guest book, I would sign it something like the Coreys, and then I'd say party of 4, and the Storms and party of 3. So that might be what you'd do as well. It really depends. It's up to you. Doesn't really matter. But the key is capture that name, capture how many, remember how many, and then also remember all the guests that have signed in. And at the end, you're going to print out all those names of the guests that attended. And then at the bottom, you'll say total guests would be, if just the 2 of us came, that'd be 7. Because Corey party of 4 and Storm party of 3, total of 7. So you'd say Corey party, Storm party, and then total guests 7. Okay? Hope that makes sense. The keys here are to make sure you use the right types and make sure that you're breaking things down into those methods. Don't just put all this in static void main. If all this code is in static void main, you've kind of missed out on some of what you've been learning. Break it apart into methods. Okay? So I'm going to pause. You need to pause the video right now and come back once you're done. I'll wait. Okay, I'm assuming you've completed all this. You wrote it on paper, and then you went ahead and created your application, right? Well, if you did and it worked, great job. If not, you're kind of struggling, well, I am going to show you. But once I show you, you should really do it yourself too. So let's start off by opening up just Notepad. So I have Notepad here and I have Visual Studio behind, so we're ready for Visual Studio. We're not going to do Visual Studio yet. So let's start off with what we need to do. We need to ask for the user's name, ask for the user's age, add the age to the total. Oops, I'm sorry, not age. User's party count. Add the party count to the total party number. And then we need to print out all names and then print out total party number. Now, I think we're missing a couple of steps here because we need to ask the user's name and then add the name to the list of names. And ask the user's party count and add the party count to the total party number. I think that works now. Okay, so that's kind of the flow of our application. Let's grab this or copy it. And these applications are simple, okay? Right now we're doing very simple applications. but we're going to get more complex. And so learning how to do this practice, even if it's just these 6 lines of planning, that's still very important. Okay, so let's go File, New Project. We're going to say this is a console UI, and this is Module 2, Lesson 13. And we'll say at the very end, console.readline. And let's do up here. Let's paste in our system or our plan. And then this is what we're going to do. Okay, so let's start off with ask for the user's name. Well, let's create a method for that. So private static string ask or get users, can't have apostrophe, get users party name. Okay. Or just say get party name. Get party name. And what we're going to do here is we're going to say console.write. What is the name of your party? And party being group or, group. So what's the name of your party? We could even say party/group. And then we'll say string output equals console.readline. Now, I don't know if you caught that or not. Let's do it again. I typed capital C, but then capital O, which isn't right. It's lowercase o. But because I hit tab, it corrected it for me. That's one of the reasons why I use tab all the time, even if I spell it all out. Even if I do that, because if I hit tab, watch that capital O. It's now a lowercase o. So that's really helpful. So just make sure that you use IntelliSense for what it's there for. It fixes even some of your typing errors. So now I'll say return output. So that's all we're going to do. We're going to capture the user's name and then put it into a variable, return the variable. So now I'm going to capture the user's, we're going to ask the user's name. Got it. We're going to add that name to a list. So let's create our list. List of string. And we're going to say parties equals new list of string. Now I could say parties.add and get party name. This works. So I'm calling the method right inside the add because this method returns a string. That string gets put in this spot and it gets added to our list. Here's a problem. How do I loop around again? Oops, forgot our loop, right? No problem. Let's get rid of this. Now, what kind of loop do we want? Do we want a for loop or a for each? No, we don't have any to loop over. Instead, we want a loop to create. So we want either a do loop or a while loop. Which do we want? Well, we're going to need at least one person to come to our party. Otherwise, there's no reason to print out a party list. So, a do loop. Now I'll leave the while equals true and create our variable for that. And we'll say string say more guests coming equals console.readline. Now, it seems like this code repeats what this code does. See that repetition? It's a little bit subtle at first, but the other thing is now our static void main is doing a couple of things. It's getting information, not just quarterbacking. Well, what we could do is we can, again, make this a little more generic and say string message. Instead of get party name, we'll say get info from console. If I hit control dot and say rename party to get info from console, it renames it up here as well. Or it should have. Oh, you know why it didn't? Because I now put this string message in there. That's a different method. I'll explain when we get to overloading methods, which is part of object-oriented programming. But for right now, just know that that's the reason it didn't work, is because I have this string message in there, which is different. So get info from console. And we're going to say right here that this will be message. And now we need to call that here. And the message is what is your party/group name? Okay. And then down here, we can copy this. We can get rid of the line and say get info from console. That's what I want to get. Let's just show that at the end. So there we go. So now I'm calling this get info from console twice. So I first add this. Now this may be a little bit hard to understand. They've got a method nested inside of another method. If that's the case, where it's getting hard to understand, cut it out and instead have that intermediate step. String party name equals this. And then add party name. I have no problem adding more lines of code if it makes things clearer. I do have a problem of making these one-liners that are hard to understand. So if you have any issue at all with this being nested inside this, then don't do it. Split it apart. Okay? That makes it more readable for you. Excellent. If it makes it more readable for the intern you're working with, then do it. I'm a firm believer in making your code readable for the least skilled person you'll work with. Because if your code is only readable by senior level developers because you're a senior level developer, well, guess what happens when you take a vacation? They call you because the mid-level developers and the junior level developers and the interns can't work on your code. I like to take vacations where no one calls me. I like to relax on the beach. I don't want to have to be in the hotel room on my computer fixing something that broke. So I like to code so that even the intern who barely knows C# can read through and understand it. So that's kind of a side note here, but that's why I'm very explicit in what I do. Things like equals, true, if I have it already be in Boolean, I am still very explicit and say that instead of imply that. Because it's just a little bit easier to read. It's a little easier to understand. I don't use the exclamation point or the bang character that often because it's hard to see. And so it's easily overlooked and assumed to be the opposite. So those are just some of my things that I do because, again, I like taking vacations. So just think that through. Yes, you can write these really cool one-liners, but if it stops you from being on your vacation, that's a problem. I don't feel so cool anymore. So just something to think about. Okay. Get info from console into the party name. add the party name to the parties, and then say, do you want to add another guest? Now, what are we missing here? Well, we're missing the number of people in the party. So let's get that next. So we have to have first, we'll put up here, int number total guests. And we'll start it off at 0. So now what we're going to do is we're going to ask for the number of guests that they have at this party. Well, I can say get info from console, but that's just going to get me a string. So let's do this. Let's create a new private method. Now I'm putting it here. I could put it below. The order does not matter. So you don't have to order your methods in a certain way. You can if you want to. You can put the public ones first and the private ones next. You can order them by alphabetize them if you want, or by function. It's up to you how you do it, but really the order doesn't matter. Not for C# at least. So private static int get party size. Now, why did I say public static int get party size? Well, because I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say total guests plus equals get party size. Makes sense, right? I just get the party size, add it to the total guests. I don't have to worry about how that works. It's just going to work. Get party size. Now I can come down here and work on just this little chunk, which is get the party size. So what's the first thing I have to do when I get the party size? Well, I need to get the string value for the number of people in the party. So string, and this is party size text equals, I don't have to do a console read line. I can just say get info from console. So now isValidNumber is going to reflect whether or not this is a valid number. We don't get to exit our do while loop until isValidNumber is true. Because if it's false, we go back to the beginning. Once we exit the loop, we return output. Now, I didn't put my code beforehand to ask the first time and then say, nope, try again. I keep asking until they give me the right number. It's up to you if you want to do it that way or not. But now I say, get info from the console. What's their name? I get it. I add it to my parties. I get the total party size, add that to our guest list. So plus equals appends it. So if it starts at 0, I say 4, it's now 4. If I say 3 the next time, it's going to say it's 7. And then I ask for if it's more guests coming. If they say yes, then I go back to the beginning. So that's the first part of it. That is, we ask the name, we add to the list of names, we ask their party count, we add the party count to the total number. And so now we're done all those things. And now we can print out all the names. Well, that's pretty easy. For each string name in parties, we're just gonna print out the name. And we'll put up here, just so we have it. We'll put a blank line, and then we're gonna put guest parties at event. Eight. No more guests. The guests of the event are the Corey family, the Storm family, and the Howards. Total guests is 15. 4 plus 3 plus 8 is 15. Okay, so that's all there was to the mini project. But you notice how we kind of broke down these things into the various parts. And we kind of reused the different parts in different areas. Now, this probably still has too much code in it. When you start getting this long, let's scroll on a method, you need to think about maybe it's doing too much. For example, why am I doing this inside static void main? And you go, well, because I am? That's not a good enough reason. So here's what we're going to do. Let's just copy this. We'll come down here and we'll say private static, and we're going to return you know what we're going to do? We're going to return nothing. I'm going to show you a little trick here. Private static void, so return nothing, and we will say load guests. Pass nothing in it either. I'm going to paste that code. So do code. Well, it's saying, I don't know what parties is because parties is declared here. It doesn't know what guests are because they're declared here. Well, also, more guests coming is declared up here. We can cut this and we can paste it down here. But the other two I need access to in other places. So I can't do that. Well, guess what we can do? I'm going to cut these two out. I'm going to paste them above static void main, but inside program. And what that does is it gives us access. And I need to make them static now, Remember, everything in here should be static. Make them private as well. Private static list of string. And then private static int. I can delete this whole section here in just a minute. But notice this down here will work. Because since these variables are declared at the class level, now everybody in this class has access to this variable and this variable. Now, it's not something you want to abuse, but it is a good way if multiple methods need to access something to provide it, is to have it at the class level. You can't put other code. So I can't put an if statement in a class. I have to have an if statement inside of a method. But for declaring variables and setting their initial value, I can do that at the class level. So now I can delete all this code and instead say load guests. And the next thing I'm looking at is, well, why am I doing a for each? Because that really could be done more than once, or it could be done more than one area. So I'm going to cut that out. Come down here. Private static void display guests. And now my static void main reads very cleanly. Load the guests, display the guests. And then here I'm printing the guests, which technically could be its own method. So now I could say print guests. I'm not sure if I'd go that far or not, but at the same time, it does make it easier to read. And the other thing is this right here, that's really part of displaying the guests. So I'm going to cut that out and come into display guests. And I'm going to paste that in. And this right here is part of the displaying the total number of guests. So yeah, I'm going to cut this out. And I'm going to say private static void display guest count. And paste it in. Now, you see how easy static void main is to read? Load the guests, display the guest count. We're done. And now you can go in here and say, oh, well, how am I displaying the guest count? That's how. You know what? I want to make some tweaks. Make some tweaks? No problem. If you say, you know what? I want to move this thing around where I display the guest count first. No problem. Put it up here. Maybe you want to display the guest count every single time that we add a guest. So we say load guests. And at the very end, before we say, do you want to add another guest? We could just say display guest count. And now everybody knows when they come in. The Corey family, number of the party, 4. Total guests, 4. Add another, yes. The Storm family with 3. Total guests, 7. Do I add another guest? Nah, I'm good. So there we go. So now we have a running total. So there's things like that we can do that make it kind of elevate how we can reuse our code. But the biggest thing I think is this right here. When you look at your requirements, this reads pretty much like our requirements. Load all the guests, display those guests, and then display the count of the guests. That's how methods, if nothing else, that's how methods can make your code easy to read. And easy to read code is easy to debug code. And debugging, which we haven't gotten to yet, but we're going to. Debugging code is what you're going to spend a lot of time doing. So, if you're going to spend a lot of time doing it, how about you make it faster? Because if you make it faster, then you have less time spent doing it, which means you have more free time or more time to write better code. So it just makes your life easier. it makes going to the beach a whole lot easier. So use methods. Okay, so that's our mini project. We kind of put all our different things together, at least the fun ones, the best ones, the lists and the for each and methods, and even moving things off into the class instead of at the method level. And that's one of those things that I didn't really cover that well earlier. And that's why doing a mini project really helps. Because when you do a mini project, it brings out the things you're still missing. And so it kind of surfaces those things. You go, wait, I don't know how to do that. And you figure it out. Or you go and learn that one little piece and add that to your skill set, and then you do it. And now that mini project has not only helped you practice what you've already been doing, but it also helps you learn something new. And so doing projects, really important. Okay, I can't stress that enough. Hopefully, this is a similar thing to what you got for yours. But remember, even if you got something that's a lot more code and it's a lot more messy and it's a lot less readable, if it works, that's the most important thing. Now, we would like to write good code. So keep practicing till you get to this point right here, or get close to this point right here, where your code is much more readable and things are broken down into chunks. And then once you're done that, then you can move on to the next module.